Hello, and welcome to Falling Forward with your host, Jany Marty. This is a little bit of like an out-of-body experience right now. I can't believe I'm actually sitting down and recording this episode. This has been a long time coming for me, if you know me personally. I have wanted to do this for a very long time, and I think what's held me back is I didn't feel strongly enough about anything in particular to really feel like it was time to do this. And then my life completely changed this year in so many gratifying ways, and it led me to feeling so much conviction over this podcast and over sharing some of my story in hopes that it'll help others and, more than anything, really be a part of my testimony and hopefully bring people closer to Jesus. But I want to start off by saying that this is a faith-based podcast. My story is, it all leads back to God. I mean, it has to, it always does. And a lot of my story is going to weave God into it, what I've learned, what I'm still learning. And I want you to know that I'm not coming here to record this from a place of, well, I've been through things and I know a thing or two, so let me teach you, young Padawan. That's not my story. That's not my style. I've been through things like we all have. I think in my experience, a lot of my life has been full of adversity, from childhood to my teenage years to my young adulthood. I mean, if there was a ditch I could fall into, I would find my way there. And a lot of it was my own doing. So this is not like, oh, life has been so unfair to me. No. God knows that I made some questionable choices in my lifetime, and those choices led me down the wrong path time and time again. But it all leads back to God, which is really what my story is about. So this podcast is about life, it's about pain, it's about joy, and the beauty in between, because I do think that in some of my darkest moments, I have had the most clarity and I have seen the most beautiful things unfold in front of me. So I hope to bring some perspective into other people's lives, if nothing more. And so I guess a little bit about me. I'm going to give you a very, very rough draft of my journey up until this point. And I'm going to leave a lot of things out on purpose, because if not, well, then I wouldn't need a full podcast. I would just make one episode. But there's too much to really put on here. The short story of the long story is that I was born into a Jehovah's Witness family. So in many ways, I was sort of born into Christianity. It was a weird form of Christianity, and it did teach me that God wasn't this loving, forgiving entity. Really, I felt like God was so strict, and I didn't feel that he was real. I mean, I was afraid of him, but I didn't feel like I could have a relationship with him. So growing up, I wanted to buy into it, but I couldn't get myself there. It felt very inauthentic. And something about me that you will learn is that I can't wear inauthenticity for too long. It makes me uncomfortable. So after a while, as soon as I turned 18, was it 18 or 19? 19. When I was 19, I decided to leave the church. I made some very hasty decisions. I left my house, I left the church, and a couple of years later, I found my way back to the church because I was feeling lonely, and I was really feeling like maybe this is all happening to me because I left the Jehovah's Witness church. So I went back to church, the same church, and that led to me leaving indefinitely shortly after. A few things happened that just didn't sit right with me, so I left. And from there on, I sort of just decided that God must not be real. And let me tell you, this is so relatable. I don't know anyone who has not been in this position at some point or other in their lives when life is really lifing and you feel like you can't catch a break. and everything feels incredibly dark and hopeless, there's a moment when you kind of just look up and you just ask, are you even listening? Do you care? Are you real? Because it feels like God can be so absent sometimes. And during that time in my life, I felt that way. And what brought me a lot of comfort was just telling myself that he didn't exist. So at that point, I went down this rabbit hole of atheism. Atheism? Can I say that word correctly? I went down this rabbit hole of just not believing God existed at all. And it's funny because I read so many different books at that time. I remember one of them was called The God Delusion. I had been recommended that by a YouTuber who was a atheist. I watched all of these different videos on YouTube, and I listened to all these different podcasts that really sold the idea that God is not real and evolution is how we all arrived here. And I wanted to believe it so bad. So bad, you guys. It just made things easier. I think for me, it felt like, well, if God doesn't exist, then he's not just ignoring me. My situation is, it's just unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate that these things have happened in my life, but it's not because he's choosing to ignore me and choosing to pay attention to others. So in a way, it was sort of reassuring in a bizarre way, right? Over time, more and more adversity happened. I had a friend of mine whose father passed away, and I remember that was the first time that I prayed in like 7 years. I just felt called to. I didn't know what else to do in his final days. I didn't know really how else to bring myself comfort or to bring them comfort other than prayer. And I remember trying prayer on like an outfit at the mall and thinking it just doesn't fit right. It doesn't feel like me. And so I tried it on and then I left it there. I didn't buy it. I didn't go home with it. I didn't keep praying. I just left it there on the shelf. And over time, more things happened to me. Well, I got married and that didn't work out. And so at the end of that relationship, I felt so incredibly lost and alone. And like there was really nothing left for me to lose at this point, rather than just trying this God thing out almost. So I decided to go to church one day. And I did. And I was overcome with emotion during the worship. I just felt really physically affected by the music. And it was just so weird for me. Like, why am I crying? I'm not a crier. This is so bizarre. And it made me uncomfortable. So I didn't go back to church for a while. But I got curious. I got a little bit curious. I started reading the Bible here and there. I started following a few Christian content creators, and I started dabbling in Christianity again. And this time, it wasn't a Jehovah's Witness Christianity. It wasn't a theology that felt harsh and cold and detached. It was a theology that felt personal. Jesus started to feel a little bit personal to me. And so at the beginning of this year was really when it all kind of came to a head. I had this moment of clarity where I just sat there and I realized, what am I angry about? Am I angry about God? Am I angry about the church? Am I angry about my own decisions? Maybe it's not God's fault that all these things have happened to me. Maybe a lot of this is just my own doing. Maybe I need to take some accountability for myself. And this is after years of therapy. So this is, at this point, I have exhausted therapy. I mean, I was in therapy for like 6 years, to the point where my therapist told me, I don't think you need to come see me anymore. I'm kind of like cutting you off. You need to go and live your life. Like, you're fine. You've worked through your things. So, well, I've exhausted therapy and I have a failed marriage. I'm 30 something, because at this point I was, 31, 32. And I don't know where to go from here. Like, where are the answers? And so I went back to church. And this time, something really clicked for me. I started to feel a hunger that I never felt before for the Lord. And that led me to pray. And the more I prayed, the more I realized that my prayers were changing. My prayers were less about what I needed God to fix in my life and how I needed Him to kind of destroy me a little bit more, because I realized there's so many things that I need to work through with God. I've been so angry with God for so long that I sort of forgot that I'm not perfect. I'm not even close to perfect. There's so many things in my life that need to be looked into, that need to be assessed. God needs to do some work in me first before I can start asking Him for things. So at some point, He really broke me in the best way, and I asked for it. I mean, I did ask to be broken and destroyed. So, I mean, he said, "Say less, girl," and He gave that to me in the form of just love. I mean, there was just so much love. I felt so incredibly loved by God and so accepted by Him. And the love that I had been looking for in a relationship, in a romantic partner, that I had always thought, if I could just have this type of relationship, then everything will be okay. And this will all make sense, I think, maybe once I get a little bit deeper into my childhood and things like that. But essentially, I was not loved in the way that I think a child should be loved as a child. And so I had this belief that if I just found the perfect partner and the perfect relationship, and if they just loved me just right, then all of these problems in my life would just go away. And then I realized that I could find the perfect partner and the perfect relationship. Not that that exists, but even then, I was never going to be fulfilled, because what was wrong was beyond what another human could offer me. And what more perfect love can you possibly find than that of Jesus? Once I really sat with the understanding that God loved me so unconditionally that there was nothing that I could do for Him to take that love back, it unlocked something in me. I realized that day that I had gotten it all wrong. I had been approaching everything all wrong. I had been prideful. I had been self-absorbed. I had been looking for light in all of the dark places. And once I realized that His love was so endless and so deep and so just, we are so unable as humans to really understand and grasp the depth of God's love for us. So once that actually sunk in, I realized I need to share this with other people, and I need to read the Bible some more. And I prayed for God to give me a deep hunger for His word, so much so that I would just want to be in it morning and night. And the more I prayed for that, the more it just started happening. I just wanted to be in His word all the time. And the more I read it, the more the Holy Spirit really spoke to me and gave me insight as to what I was reading. And I left every single Bible study session feeling lighter and lighter and lighter. Like there was a layer of this onion that was Jany that had been healed through that session. And this was something therapy couldn't do. This was something my girls' nights couldn't do. This was something a relationship couldn't do. This was something only Jesus could do. And so the more I healed, and I'm still healing, don't get me wrong, I am definitely a work in progress. We all are. This podcast is called Falling Forward because that's what we're all doing. We're all essentially falling forward. We're all sort of just telling God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand what's happening. Things are painful. Things are unclear. There's so much uncertainty in my future, but I am just trusting that you know where I'm going. And this name actually came to me in a dream because during my faith journey, I had shared so much of these thoughts that I'm having now with you guys, with my friends, and a few of them had told me you should really consider starting a podcast. And I had wanted to start a podcast for so long. It's not even funny. I just couldn't figure out what I loved enough to talk about all the time. And this really resonated with me because I thought this might be what I've been looking for, what I've been waiting for, but I need to pray about it. So I'm going to pray about it and leave it in God's hands. And if he wants me to start this podcast, if this is something that is in his plans and this is going to serve a greater purpose and help other people get closer to him, then things will just gradually happen. And that night that I prayed that prayer, I had a dream that someone kept telling me, why don't you fall forward into God? And they kept telling me that, and they wrote it down on a piece of paper. And I woke up and I couldn't stop thinking about that expression and what falling forward meant. Because when we fall, we typically fall back, right? A lot of times, like the expression you fall back into old habits. You fall back into patterns that you've been in for your whole life. When you fall back, you kind of regress. But when you fall forward, I mean, there's progress there. I mean, I know you're falling, but you are moving forward. You are going in a positive direction. And when we fall forward into God, we really don't know where we're going. But we don't need to. We don't need to be perfect. We don't need to be sure. We don't need to have it all figured out. We just know that God knows what's coming next and he's got you. And that certainty is a certainty that I never had before. So this podcast is about learning how to fall forward towards God, towards healing, towards honesty, even when things don't make sense, even when we feel lost, even when times are hard, and in the in-between, because there's a lot of in-between, between joy and sadness. There's a lot of in-between, and that's where we usually live, right? But as Christians, we find joy in so many moments of the in-between. And that's what this is really about. My purpose with this podcast is to hopefully help other people who are going through difficult times and just need to feel like they have a friend, need to feel like somebody else has been there, because I have been there. I am telling you, I have been there. And I'm not the type of person to not share things if I feel like it will help others. So my goal here is to be as authentic and as real and as honest with you guys as possible, to really bring some perspective into our difficult and trying times and just remind us all how much it all is about Jesus, and he's with us even when it feels like he's absent. You know, I recently started reading the book of Job, and I'm almost done with it now, but I didn't expect to like Job so much. The book, I had read it a million times before as a young Christian in my Jehovah's Witness church, but this time reading it as an adult, as somebody who has been through things, and don't get me wrong, I have not been through enough things to say that I am even close to Job, because Job really went through it if you know the story. But Job lost all of his kids, all 10 of his children. He lost his health. He lost the support of his wife. His friends were not great friends. They gave him horrible advice. He lost his wealth, his servants. I mean, he lost everything. And even through that, the first thing he did upon losing his children, which I think we can all agree is the absolute most awful part of all of those losses, was he fell to the floor and he worshiped God. So reading the book of Job has really brought a lot of perspective into my life, and how much in the darkness, in the most awful moments of our lives, how do we respond to the darkness? Do we worship God? Do we take hope that we know that the light is coming? Because Job did, even though he couldn't see it, even though things just got worse for him from there, he still knew the light was coming. He knew God was going to reveal himself to him eventually. He knew God was going to deliver him from his pain and his suffering. So, how are we approaching our pain? And that is what I'm hoping to bring into Falling Forward. And I promise there will be lighter topics. It's not all intense and deep and heavy, but I just really wanted to share my heart, why I created this, what I'm hoping to do with it, and hopefully God blesses this and it is a blessing to you if you're listening. Thank you for joining me here today, and I will see you at the next one.